Thanks so much, Phil. Hello, everyone. My name is Jesper Ambrosius, and I work for the LEGO Group and head up what we call LEGO Workplace Experience. And today, I will talk to you about leading in a hybrid workplace. So, working remotely or working from home is not a new thing. Many of us have done it for years, but it's quite clear that COVID-19 accelerated an already evolving process. And the question, of course, is when people are dispersed more and when people work more from home, and maybe every meeting will be an online meeting, as Chris Top wrote on a LinkedIn article more than a month ago, how does that affect leadership? So that's really what I'll dive into today. And just what Chris was really writing about in the article was if we randomly come into the office, then just gathering 5 or 6 people will be very, very difficult. And also, in that sense, the minority rule counts here, because if just one person is online, everybody should preferably be online. So I believe that leaders should at least focus on 4 things in a hybrid workplace. And I write here at least because there's definitely more, but these are just what I found interesting in the field that I'm in of workplace experiences. So the number 1 is focus on output, not input. The second one is plan ahead. The third one is master the digital room. And the fourth one is what I call communicate triad of interest. Right, so let's go to the first one here. I believe that with people working more remotely, not being physically together, there's a risk of a declining trust. And what I mean by this is that it's still out there. Definitely experienced it myself. I have colleagues in other companies experience as well, that if you unobserved, people will tend to slack, right? So if we cannot see what you're doing, you're maybe slacking. And when you simply do not have that metric or proxy of input of hours spent behind the screen equals output, then something else has to happen. So what I believe we must do as leaders, and it's actually something we should have been doing for a while, at least in the knowledge sector, is to be better at defining end goal and then invite for continuous feedback. So instead of observing that one person is sitting 10 hours behind the screen, another is sitting 9 hours, but then the person sitting 10 hours is more productive, we should instead be better as leaders to define the task, the end goal, and then invite for continuous feedback. That actually also will then, you could say, benefit or reward those who are extra fast or extra talented, because they will actually then get time back for their work-life balance if they do their task quickly. The other area here is what I call plan ahead, and there's really 2 areas, and I'll go through a few examples from LEGO actually that we have created in my team to highlight what I'm saying here. The one thing is plan according to activity, and the other thing is really plan with your team. So let me just showcase what I mean here. Oh, yeah, right. So our hypothesis is actually that working from home or working remotely is not in direct competition with working from the office. Actually, we believe it complements each other. And this is highlighted here where on the y-axis you have collaborative and individual, and on the x-axis you have the office or working from home. And here you can see that what we've mapped out here is actually not just it's an assumption. It's also something that we've actually tested out at LEGO and asked people about. So this is actually based on survey as well. And here you can see that working with more focused work, doing e-learning, town halls, quick coordination meetings might actually be better suited for working from home or remotely, whereas workshops, strategy meetings, walk and talks, informal meetings, it's much better suited still in the physical workplace where you are together. And here, let's look at Albert. and how we could look like for someone who works in a hybrid workplace. So here you can see on Monday, Albert comes in. He does some focus work in the office. Then later he does some collaboration work. It's a bit the same on Tuesday, also coming to the office. On Wednesday he then works from home. It's more focused work for Albert, and he goes then back to the office on Thursday. Again, a lot of it is with colleagues. It's mostly with colleagues when he's in. And then on Friday again, he works from home and does more of the coordination and the focused work that is better suited for, in most cases, is better suited for home. And if we then look at two teams here, and I'll come back to why I think this is so important to look at the individual, but also the team, is to see that here you can see that it's team 1 and team 2. So team 1 have agreed to come in Tuesday and Wednesday, and team 2 has decided to come in on Monday and Thursday. Of course, both teams are with the same company, and here you can actually see that not only do they plan so they are physically together on the same days, so they kind of get the maximum benefit of being in the office, but it's also much better for capacity and occupancy if you do it like this, instead of if people came in at random, as Chris Tubb is referring to in his article on LinkedIn. And what's interesting here is actually also, the office that is still adds a lot of value by really making space for social capital to thrive. And there's an Harvard Business Review article from a month or so ago with some scientists from Microsoft who looked through a lot of the data they've created last year or so. And one of their conclusions, I think the most interesting conclusion, is that the spontaneous, informal interactions at risk in a hybrid and remote work are not distractions or unproductive. They foster the employee connections that feed productivity and innovation. And these interactions are the soil in which ideas grow. And that's why it's so important, I believe, that what might seem unproductive in the very short term might be the most productive in the long term. So the third area here is master the digital room. So a lot of the things that you would do in a normal face-to-face meeting is also the same thing you should do in an online meeting. So you should still prepare, you still explain why we're having the meeting, what are the roles, who have the different roles in the meeting. You should engage the participants and so on and so forth. But there are especially 3 areas I believe is very important in an online setting. One of them is agree on the housekeeping rule. So that is, for instance, do we have camera on? Depends on the intensity of the meeting, probably. You raise your hand if you have a question or if you have a comment. Make sure to mute when you're only listening, and so on and so forth. That's important too, because it's not natural for us necessarily to be in that setting. The other thing is really engaging participants, and that's about also doing lots of micro engagement, so to say. You can use polls, you can use quizzes, you can use energizers. I'll give you an example in a bit on that. Because what has also been what is seen and what has been seen by research, what we can see is that a lot of people do work related and non-work related stuff whilst being in online meetings. So it's important to constantly engage the participants. And as one example, we have in my team, if we have a meeting that is at least an hour long, we always start the meeting with an energizer, and I'll give you an example on that in just a bit. And the final part is really to manage energy. And what I mean by that is that we can probably at maximum keep 20 minutes of attention. So it's important to have a lot of variance in the way we run meetings. So whether that's separating the meeting into different groups, you go out, you come back into plenum discussions, or you maybe engage via the chat box or whatever, is important to get the variance in, because we have so many meetings and there's a risk with more meetings. That's also what most can see, that in a hybrid workplace or with people working remotely with more online meetings, there's risk of mental exhaustion, there's risk of too many meetings, and it's just difficult for people to manage the energy. And this is just an example of what we've created this Lego playoffs handbook, a handbook of energizers in our team. And we then use that every time we have a meeting in the team. And we've actually right now trying to also engage other teams in Lego to do the same. So hopefully we can kind of propel a trend there. And then finally, what I describe as a triad of interest. And what I mean by that is really that for leaders, I believe, to really, you say, it's a huge change process we're in, and for leaders to come out good, in this change process, I think we need to understand and communicate the three different interests in this. There's the I, or the me. So that is basically my needs, my flexibility, my ability to actually plan my week, my month, my work day. Then there's also the team, and the I also has to adapt to the team. So my team also has to adapt to whatever I find is important to create a good team bond, to create a good team spirit, and to actually develop as a team. So so that's where there's a potential conflict there, but there is two potentially different needs in some cases. And then there's also the third entity here, which is a company, and the company also has some needs, like building a culture, just sustaining the culture, like developing leaders, like onboarding people, the social fabric of the whole company. For a company like Lego, which has been around for almost 90 years, the history and the values are so crucial. And of course, the company, represented by the executive leadership team and the board, they want to maintain this, of course. So these three entities have to allow, we have to understand each other. So it's not, so when I ask you to come in with the rest of your team on Wednesday, it's not because I don't trust you, it's because I want to build the team. And the same when the company sets out a, so to say, a guideline or a concept for how to work going forward. At Lego, for instance, we have a 3-2 model that we communicated just recently. That's not because the company does not trust the employee. It's really because it has some needs that it's also important to fulfill. Otherwise, I think we run the risk of this tug of war between the entities, and so explaining that to your employees, and constantly refer back to the different needs, I believe will be a hugely important change management task, but something we must overcome in this new world. So that was it.